We're going to continue our dementia training with effective communication tips. You know, communication is one of the most important parts of our daily lives and caregiving. When our clients suffer from dementia, the communication process breaks down, making every aspect of our caregiving so much more difficult. So yes, your physical care is keeping your clients safe and comfortable. But how do you do that without effective communication? In a person with dementia, the most important part of communication is hearing from and learning from them when they can't communicate to you verbally what they need. We're going to have a short video now, and I want you to kind of look at things in this video. Just because someone doesn't provide an opinion doesn't mean they don't have one. Very often there's confusion because they can't remember, and how we as caregivers can unintentionally make it work. Also take a look at how humor is a good way a lot of times to relax that client.
Of all the different aspects of life on which dementia has an impact, arguably the most devastating is communication. We could even say that dementia is a sort of communication disease. If communication wasn't damaged as a result of dementia, many of the other effects it has would be much easier to manage. We communicate all the time, when we're happy, excited, fascinated, intrigued or eager, when we're feeling amorous, affectionate or moved by something, we communicate about it. If we're sad, confused, worried or angry, we tend to let other people know by communicating. A person with dementia still has all those feelings. And because dementia is such a challenging and frightening disease, they're likely to have more than their fair share of sadness, confusion, worry and anger. But the disease makes it more difficult to tell others about those feelings, and that in turn can make the feelings worse. Just when they need to communicate their needs more, they find they can't. They might need a bit more explanation of something, want to ask something, or just need a hug. Things like that can be difficult to ask for at the best of times, but dementia takes away some of the tools we use for communication, and that makes it even harder. We've all been in situations where, because we haven't said anything, people have assumed we didn't have an opinion or any particular wishes, but we did. Not communicating about an idea or feeling doesn't mean it's not there. There's a risk that a person with dementia will get discouraged from trying to communicate, and that means their needs, wants and opinions are easy to overlook. That's why it's important to find ways to keep the communication working, even when it's difficult. Even if only one person in the room has dementia, everyone is affected by this communication disease. It affects family members, friends, professional carers, and all the many people we come into contact with day by day. The hairdresser, the dentist, the man in the post office, the woman at the supermarket checkout, the plumber, the postman, the taxi driver. Everyone is vulnerable. It affects how they communicate and can make them feel insecure and frustrated too. That's because communication is a two-way process. We exchange information and express our feelings and thoughts to each other. We're all in it together. Like any disease, a communication disease needs to be treated. And the good news is that because communication is so vital to us, so central to our lives, people are generally very committed to helping make it work as well as it can. Humans can be very creative when it comes to communicating, and often we just need to feel confident enough to try things out and recognise that not everything will work perfectly every time. Letting a bit of humour into the situation can help. So can finding the process interesting, making it a project to figure out how to overcome a difficulty or get messages to and fro effectively. We can get a long way if we approach the situation with kindness and patience. That way, the person with dementia doesn't feel as if they're being blamed for the problem. It's important to avoid getting into a competition for who gets heard and who has to keep quiet. Everyone needs space to express their ideas and feelings. It also helps if we understand the basic types of problem at the heart of this communication disease. One is how dementia changes a person's ability to communicate with ease. The other is how the people they communicate with can unintentionally make things worse. Let's look at each in turn. Dementia is caused by damage to the brain. The damage leads to two common problems. Firstly, the pathways in the brain for finding and linking up words and meanings aren't able to run as effectively. One consequence of that is that the person with dementia will find it difficult to keep up when someone talks to them. They need a little more time than they did before. Another consequence is that the person with dementia may not be able to find the words they need and may have to search around for other words to use instead, even if they're not the most accurate ones. As a result, the person they're talking to may have to do some guessing to figure out what meaning was intended. The second common problem caused by the brain damage is that the pathways used for storing information don't work as effectively. This means that recent events may not get recorded in memory. That's a problem because the vast majority of what we communicate about relates to the recent past. What we say now depends on remembering what we said last and what the other person just said. Even when we're discussing what we'll do later, it only makes sense if both of us know what we've already done. So if we don't share the same memories about what's happened recently, it takes no time at all for confusion to arise. But the brain damage itself is only part of why the communication disease is such a problem. Communication is very tied up with how we think and feel. And that's the reason why, when we're talking to a person with dementia, we can end up making things worse for them. Here are some of the ways it can happen. One, we jump to the wrong conclusions. We forget that the person with dementia wants to communicate and has things to say. Instead, we assume that because they didn't say anything, they don't have a view. Because they spoke with anger, they must be angry with us, when in fact they're frustrated about their communication problems. Because they didn't say something nice to us, they don't care about us. 2, we react badly when we find something in the communication unacceptable. Sometimes a person with dementia may express themselves more negatively than we expected, or use words that we don't like to hear. This can be because the words they really needed weren't available, and they had to make do with the ones they could find. The many things they have to deal with are getting in the way of their ability to pay attention to the tone of what they say. It's just not the most important thing for them at that moment. The disease has damaged parts of the brain that usually prevent us using extreme language like swear words and racist terms. In situations like this, there's a risk that we reject the person rather than the things they've said. That will only make things worse. 3. We get frustrated about the communication problems we're facing. We're used to communication running smoothly, so when it doesn't, we can easily feel insecure and unsure what to do. That can lead to frustration. For example, because the person with dementia can't always lay down a memory of a recent event, we may find that they don't know things we expected them to know, or haven't done things they were supposed to do. We have to say the same thing to them more than once, and we can't figure out a way to make it stick in their memory. Or they don't understand what we say. Again, we're desperate to find a way of saying it that will work, but we can't find one. Getting frustrated is understandable, but it doesn't help and often makes things worse. Sometimes we'll feel guilty about being frustrated, and then we have to deal with both negative emotions at once. 4. We get bored or annoyed at hearing the same expressions or stories over and over again. A person with dementia will often home in on a familiar phrase or anecdote and repeat it many times. It's important to remember that these repetitions represent familiarity and security. We need to be tolerant and patient and continue to show interest. 5. We find it hard to see things from the other person's point of view. When communication gets challenging, it's tempting just to dig in and defend our own position. We may feel that the person with dementia isn't trying hard enough to see things from our point of view, and that's why they're making unreasonable demands. We may not be able to fathom how they've come to the opinion or decision that they've expressed. In these situations, we lose touch with our capacity to empathise and see things from a different perspective. We need to find that ability again. Patience, curiosity, and humour can all help. 6. We get tired because of the effort it takes to communicate. Effective communication uses many different aspects of our mind and body. We have to pull together our knowledge, our ideas, and our feelings and relate them to the words we speak or hear. That's very tiring. It's even more tiring for the person with dementia. Tiredness will tend to make us grumpy, and that can make the communication work even less well. We have to notice when that's happening and acknowledge the need to step back and get things in perspective. Dealing with communication challenges like these means dealing with aspects of ourselves that we don't usually look at. We have to take charge of our emotions, question our basic assumptions, and decide on our priorities. It takes energy, commitment, and courage to do that. We have to be grown up, generous-hearted, and practical. And we won't manage it unless we look after ourselves as well as the other person. Finding the situation interesting can be a useful way of putting the negative thoughts and feelings in their place. Communicating effectively can be a project, an experiment. If something goes wrong, it's not a failure, but an interesting challenge. Why didn't that work? What could I have done differently? Seeing communication as a project can enliven us and keep us focused and positive. It opens the way to creativity and stops us taking things too seriously. We need to remember that it's natural to get frustrated when communication isn't going well, because it's hard work and we don't always know how successful it's being. We need to remember that people with dementia have hopes, fears, ideas, interests, and worries like anyone else, but they can't always manage to communicate these things. That can make them feel very alone. They need others to help them get their ideas across. We need to remember that a person with dementia will get frustrated with themselves and their situation. But being frustrated isn't going to do them any good. It will just make them feel bad. So we need to coax them into a more positive approach. We need to remember that communication is easier when everyone's relaxed. If we can laugh together and have fun, more information will flow. We need to experiment with ways of making that happen. Research has shown that if measures are taken to improve communication, some of the other symptoms of dementia can improve as well. People feel less isolated, frightened and sad when communication's working. So what can we learn? Communication isn't only about ideas. Even if it's difficult to share new information, we can share positive feelings with a smile, a laugh, a hug. If a person feels loved and appreciated rather than a source of annoyance and problems, they'll relax more and communicate better. Finding out how best to make the communication work can become an interesting project. That approach makes it easier to cope when something doesn't go well. It makes it easier to laugh and not take it all too seriously. It helps keep away from the sense that someone's to blame, when it's the disease which is to blame. It's helpful to think about what it's like to be the other person. If we can imagine being in their position, we can work out what they would find most helpful. It's not that difficult to recognise how, if we're struggling to express an important idea, it's hurtful when the other person tuts, turns away, or gets cross. It's useful to imagine a range of different ways in which someone in our situation might respond, and then choose the options that are most constructive and humane to all parties. That doesn't mean ignoring our own feelings and pretending everything's okay. That's not at all constructive or healthy. But it may mean experimenting with being a different person in situations where we tend to have a particular response that isn't working. It helps to talk to other people about what they might do in a given situation and to experiment with doing things in different ways. In particular, it's important to notice which challenges keep arising and how they typically turn out. If every conversation is ending in tears or with a door slammed or with a feeling of rejection or failure, clearly something needs to be changed. Although there are lots of potential ideas out there for how to communicate better, each situation is different and each pairing of people is different. So in the end, it'll come down to our own observation in our own situation and to our willingness to take an interest in what's happening and look creatively for solutions. A creative, interested approach can take the sting out of the problems so they hurt less, annoy less, and create less guilt and anxiety. We owe that to all the people we encounter and to ourselves, to everyone who is affected by dementia, the communication disease.
So there are different types of communication. Verbal, number one way. How we speak is very important. We want to make sure we're doing it respectfully. We want to make sure that client knows they're listening and that we're listening to them. Think about this. We got 2 ears and 1 mouth. You know why? So we can listen twice as much. As the client progresses, depending on what part, the stage of the dementia they're in, we're going to be slow. Instructions are going to be calm. We're going to break those bigger, complex instructions into smaller, simple steps. And we're really going to watch how our tone, what that conveys to the client. Nonverbal body language is going to make a big, big difference in any of our relationships with people, but especially as somebody progresses along with dementia. They're going to take a look at our facial expressions. We always want to make sure we're focusing on them, that they can see that we have their full intention. Think about it. A smile does wonders at a frustrating moment. We may have to demonstrate a task that they're showing them more often than before. If I want to ask my client if they want a cup of coffee, maybe as the disease progresses, I'm going to hold a cup of coffee and ask them. So as the dementia progresses, a caregiver's nonverbal and our behavior really becomes more important. We can be a mirror to their client, meaning how they see us. If they see us very stressed, very upset, often they'll mirror that. But the good thing about it is we can be calm, we can smile. That's also going to help them. People are also going to benefit from written communication. Some families do that with notes, maybe the label cabinets. We really like a whiteboard, those whiteboards with a black magic marker. You could put the name of the visitor, you could put the weather, you could put the date, whatever you think is going to be important for that client. This next movie is going to be about a bookcase analogy. Now, you know what that means? It's going to compare areas of our brain, areas that are changed with dementia, what's the same and what has really changed.
Hi, I'd like to explain dementia to you in the way that it was explained to me. I'd like to picture that I'm an 80-year-old woman standing here, and that beside me there is a bookcase that's as tall as I am and is filled with books. Now, each of those books represents a fact or a date or a number or a memory that I've gained in the last 80 years of my life. So right at the top, my most recent memory, so what I had for breakfast, getting dressed this morning. The next shelf down might be things that are a little bit less recent, so maybe my last holiday, what I did at Christmas, maybe the last time you came to visit me. The next shelf down by my shoulders will be my 70s, my 60s, my 50s, my 20s will be down by my knees, and my childhood memories will be all the way down by my feet. So that is the bookcase that makes up me. Now, when I get hit by dementia, what's going to happen is that my bookcase is going to start to rock. And I'm going to start losing those books, starting from the ones on the top, which may explain why my short-term memory is likely to be affected first. So, as my dementia progresses, I might find myself having lost not only the top shelf, but the next one down and the next. I might find myself living in the 1950s. Now, embrace my reality. I go into my kitchen today to make myself a cup of tea. What do you think? Given that I'm expecting a 1950s kitchen, what's a likely accident that I might have? If you've thought putting an electric kettle on a hob, that's absolutely right. Now, as my carer, as my relative, you might be tempted to say, we shouldn't let her make tea anymore, that's really dangerous. But there is a simpler solution, which might be to just change my kettle from an electric one to a whistling kettle, because that's what I'm expecting, and I know how to use that. And I learned how to use a whistling kettle all the way down in my childhood, so that memory is likely to stay with me a lot longer. That's not going to help everybody with dementia, but it might help me at this particular stage. Now, I talked about this one bookcase that's got all these facts and memories and numbers, and that's quite a flimsy bookcase, and when that gets hit by dementia, it rocks a lot. Now this bookcase is representing a part of my brain called the hippocampus, which is more susceptible to dementia. However, my feelings and my emotions, the things that make me who I am and the reasons why you love me, they're all managed separately by a different part of the brain called the amygdala. And that's all here in a separate bookcase. It's a really strong oak bookcase. And when that gets hit by dementia, it's not going to move very much. Let me explain to you how the two bookcases work together. So when I was a child, I had a teacher. He's on the hippocampus bookcase. He was incredibly inspiring. And the way that he made me feel, inspired, in awe, that is stored in a separate book on my amygdala bookcase. So the teacher is on the hippocampus, but the way I felt, that's going to be managed by the amygdala. Now let's bring it back to today, where I'm the 80-year-old woman. I have dementia. You come to visit me. So that's a fact, that happens here. And we have a blazing row. I'm probably going to feel upset, sad, angry, and that's going to go onto the amygdala in a book here. You might go away thinking, it doesn't really matter. She'll forget that I even came to visit, let alone that we had a row. And you know what? You're probably right. That book will probably go. But what's likely to stay with me are those feelings, those emotions, that anger, and with nothing to relate it to, it might be really confusing for me. But let me leave you with a positive example. Say you come to visit me, and you take me out to the seaside, and we have a great time. So here it is, the seaside, the waves, the great time, the feelings of safety and happiness and love that I feel are held over here in the amygdala. As soon as we get back to my house, I've forgotten where we've been. That book is gone. And you might think, oh, it's just not worth it. Why do I bother? I don't think I'm going to carry on visiting her. But look over here. Those feelings, that safety, that warmth, that's going to stay with me for a lot longer. So I would like to encourage you to continue to visit and to care for the people that you know, relatives, friends who have dementia, and to remember that there is more to the person than the dementia. Thank you.
We're also going to take a look at each individual's assessment and their background information. So how do we prepare for that good communication? The more you know about your client, the better it's going to be for you. We call it a life history. We all have a life history. It's going to be important for us to know where are they from, their children, grandchildren, their pets. What kind of job did they do? What kind of hobbies do they have? What kind of foods do they like? You know, we'll give you your initial information from Home Care Angels. We'll include more information on that initial assessment and the care plan. A lot of good ways, even when you just meet, you know, that's sometimes the most intense part. Take a look at the pictures they have in their home. You know, sometimes you can just break the ice. Oh, what a beautiful baby. Or, gee, that's a nice family pictures. That's a good way to start a conversation. Families, friends that are there that you meet, they're a good place to start. You know, certainly they know that client in the beginning a lot better than we do. And your conversation, you know, everything is going to be geared and promoting what they've retained, what's important to them. And you're going to show them that by listening and talking. A lot of people have a hard time expressing their emotions when they're dealing with dementia. You know, caregivers deal with a range of emotions. There's many, many positive remaining emotions, but it's those challenging behaviors that's good to talk about. And you're the ones that are going to be dealing with them, and you're going to be the detectives knowing and trying to figure out what's behind that emotion. How should you talk with your client? First of all, you want to talk directly to them. And that means even at your first interview when you meet the client and the family. Your conversation is going to be directly towards that client. Think about and ask, if you don't know, what's their preferred name? Do they like their first name? Do they like to be called Joe? Or do they like to be called Mr. Smith? Think about how you like to be addressed. Really, think about how much they've lost already. We really want to respect their identity. Maybe they were called doctor, maybe they were called professor. So that's really important to know. Direction rather than options as they progress is going to be important too. By meaning that, I mean, let's say you're deciding on helping them pick out an outfit to wear for the day. If you had dementia that was far along in the progress, opening up that closet with 20, 30 different outfits is really going to be provoking anxiety, frustration. Much better strategy, you could take out 2 sweaters. Would you like the blue sweater or would you like the white sweater? Sometimes families even help by cleaning out the closet, so there's not a lot out there. Same thing if you want to talk about for dinner. What can I make you for dinner? Well, that might be a lot harder question to ask rather than, I'm going to make your favorite chicken that you love for dinner. Think about how you phrase it and which is going to be the less distressing to that client. Play by play, meaning, let's say you're talking about their routine for the day. We're going to go take a walk. We're going to take a shower. I really, depending on their stage in the dementia, would not give them the whole day itinerary. Play by play. Again, it means breaking down something complex like their whole day into step by step. Let them know what you're going to be doing. I'm going to step out of the room into the kitchen, and certain steps about what you're going to do. So all those directions at a time really can be overwhelming. Keep in mind it changes, and you're just going to change as to what adapts the best with them. When someone's talking to you, your client with dementia, keep up that nonverbal. Look at them. When people are talking to you with or without dementia, we all want to know that we're heard. It's great if you say, oh, good idea. Nod while they're talking. Nod yes means you're conveying they understand. Nothing wrong with saying, oh yeah, I understand. Prompts are good. Like I talked about, you want to ask your client if they want coffee. Maybe you got to hold up that coffee or that glass of orange juice. You want some orange juice? It's just another visual contact to help them out. A lot of people have pictures in their houses. We talked about signs in the house. Those are all prompts, and we're going to help them respectfully. I've seen families go about caregivers, a very gentle reminder. Let's say somebody's got a visitor coming. You're going to say, Mary, your husband's sister is here. Remember, her name is Amy. Very respectful prompts. We're showing that we're helping them. We're not making them feel stupid at all. It's respectful. Validation is a strategy. We're going to hear a lot about that in dementia training. We want to find out a lot about that feeling. We want to see their dementia, how they feel it. We're going to accept their feeling. Empathy is a lot of part of validation. That means we want to show them that we understand how they're feeling. Reality orientation really doesn't work with your care with dementia clients. You don't want to drill in them. Remember, I told you, today is February 2021. You know what? Using that word remember never really helps. Even if you say it patiently, it just promotes that suspicion, confusion. It really makes somebody feel stupid because they don't remember. We're going to enter their reality. No matter how much we have to do today and how slow that client is, We're going to try to see it through their eyes. A lot of reassurance is needed, a lot of praise in your care. Some of the clients will be suspicious, afraid of things. There's a big dog in the basement. We're not going to take reasoning and say, now come on, the doors are locked. There's no way there could be a dog in there. I think the best way to do it is say, don't worry, I'll keep you safe. I'll go take a look. I'll take care of it. No worries. These people have to be allowed to feel down, pessimistic, or negative, but that doesn't mean we can't try to steer them positively with redirection. We talked a little bit about earlier how what they see in us definitely can be mirrored back to them. Think about that. If you're a really worried caregiver because you know this person doesn't want to take a bath and they see you scurrying around, they see stress on your face, I think you're going to get a lot better reaction than if they see a nice, calm, smiling, optimistic caregiver telling about all the positives of a warm, soothing shower. A lot of times what you say to them is validating. Somebody's having a hard time. I'm sorry, you seem frustrated. Client repeatedly is looking for my daughter. When's my daughter coming? When's my daughter here? Why isn't my daughter here? How about saying, I know you miss your daughter. And you might be able to follow that line with some redirection, with some pictures or talking about that daughter. I think another good line, whatever way you want to phrase it, is, I'm sorry, I know this is hard. So think about your emotions and what they're seeing when they see you, and hopefully you can mirror it back to them to kind of lower that anxiousness with them. If we talk about 3 stages of dementia, the first stage, sometimes you really got to be with that person for a while before you even pick up on it. People at this stage may definitely realize it, and they can do a lot of disguising. And it will change as your client's dementia progresses. So some things to think about in the first stage is really don't assume anything until you know for sure. You may hear that word dementia, but that doesn't really tell you where they are in that process. We're going to give them a little extra time to listen, give them some extra time to respond. There's nothing wrong with asking them if they're comfortable, if they need a little bit of help. Maybe they just need help with the remote control. As things get farther in disease, that can be a real scary thing. Something as simple that they used every day. Nothing wrong with asking. And it's okay to smile and laugh. Oh, my remote at home has so many buttons. I always got to ask my kids. I think it's very important not to pull away. You may feel uneasy. Just kind of let them show you what stage they're in, and take it from there. Second stage will definitely show more language problems, and our communication will have to change as their dementia progresses. As they progress, you're going to have to really take a look at the location where the communication is. One-on-one in a quiet space is really the best. They have a hard time tuning out all those other interruptions. Your speech is going to be slow and clear. Keep an eye on that nonverbal communication you're doing, the nodding, making eye contact. We're going to allow them plenty of time to respond. The kind of questions you're going to ask are really a lot different than when we think about conversation. Yes or no questions for someone who has trouble processing is much better. If you ever were told about socializing, how to strike up a conversation with someone new in a social situation, they always say don't ask yes or no questions. You're at a gathering, meeting new people. Oh, are you a realtor? Yes. A better way to draw out somebody that doesn't have dementia would be, oh, tell me about your career. I'm in the realty business. But it's really the opposite when you think about it with someone with dementia. That vague sense of an open ended question is much harder for them. Meaning, you may not want to say, what do you want to drink? Coffee, apple juice, tea. No. How about you want some coffee? That way they can tell you no, they can tell you yes. We're going to really avoid criticizing. We're going to take the word no out of our dictionary. Correcting them doesn't help. We want to let it be whatever we can. If something isn't causing any harm, we're just going to let it be. Visual cues will become more important. Like I said, holding up that cup, pointing to something. As the disease progresses, maybe it's easier to brush your teeth right alongside the client that has trouble understanding. So that's more of a visual cue. There may be more written notes, notes on the cabinet, notes labeling things in their home. Family will help you in that. And you're actually, if you've been with the client, going to know a good thing about what works and what doesn't. Here's another video that's going to outline some tips about communicating with your clients.
Here are a few tips on how to adjust your communication so you can continue to have meaningful conversations with people living with dementia. Avoid the word remember. Some people may not be able to remember, and this only points out memory challenges. Instead of asking, "Do you remember your daughter?" use prompts like, "Did Leslie, your daughter, call while I was out?" Be agreeable. Resist the temptation to correct people with dementia if they talk about things that aren't real or events that happened years ago but they think occurred recently. Share the reality without confirming or denying what they said. Speak slowly at a normal rate. That's 2 to 3 words per second. Take a breath between each sentence and be observant to be sure they understand and have time to catch up. Speak in sentences that include only one idea. Try to keep sentences short and use familiar words to reduce memory load. For example, let's walk to the store. Ask only one question at a time. Use yes or no answer questions or give a maximum of 2 options. For example, did Leslie or Sarah call while I was out? Monitor your body language. Some people with dementia may be able to read facial expressions and body language more accurately than understanding spoken words. Try to make your words happy, sad, etc. align with your body movements. Be at their level and maintain eye contact. Don't stand or hover over people. It can be intimidating. Maintaining eye contact will also help communicating with someone with hearing loss. Use actions to support your words. For example, rather than just saying, "Let's go for a walk," also point to the door or put on your coat to demonstrate what you mean. Tell them what you're going to do. Make everyone aware of your intentions before you do things. Sudden and unexpected movements can cause stress. Show and tell. Bring your loved one an object that has an old memory or story around it and see if it creates a connection. If it works, bring it back for another visit. Ask for their advice. For example, ask for their wisdom on children, renovations, or life in general. It may create humor, but it will also help them feel valued.
Let's think about some examples. Shower. Shower, getting that communication across in a real optimistic way is your goal. Getting the shower done is a goal. So I don't think the first one is the right way. Mary's your client. Mary, it's time to take a shower. Think about a much more relaxing way to convey it. Have everything ready. So number 2, Mary, it's time to take a warm, comfortable shower on such a cold day. so you can be all clean for bed and get a great night's sleep. Notice some of it is the word, some of it is my tone. Now here's Mary in the second example. Mary doesn't like her hair brushed. Mary, you raised 4 children. You should remember how to brush hair. Think about a better way to say it. Mary, you raised 4 children. I bet you brushed a lot of hair in your days. A lot has to do with the words I pick, and a lot has to do with the tone. And you can script your examples to what works best for your client. There's another example that we really need to avoid. It's called elder speak. Elder speak is I think it's rude. It's how you speak to a child that is like a child. It's not respectful at all, whether your client has dementia or no dementia at all. Using we're going to take a shower, or our house, it's really conveying they can't perform and act independently. Or using those baby talk names. Oh, honey, sweetie. Your intentions may be the greatest, but in the long run, you're not doing them any favors. It's not treating them with respect. So I would avoid all of that. So some of the issues with changing your speech are, we want to show them respect. We don't want to make them feel incompetent. It can cause them stress. They may not even say it stresses them out, but it will cause them stress. And it can cause resistiveness to care. And think about it. It makes your job harder. Thank you. Be sure to let me know. Let any of us know if you got any questions about this section.